welcome once again to EWTN's Bookmark. I am Doug Keck, your host. Our guest author is Dr. Hendershott, author of Status Envy, The Politics of Higher Education, available through the EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. It's great to see you again. The last time we met was at Franciscan University several years ago when I was up there, and we taped a bunch of programs, and I got an opportunity to talk to you about another book which you had spoken about on our live show with Father Joseph back a few months. What was the title of that book?
That book is called Renewal, How a New Generation of Catholic Priests and Bishops Are Revitalizing the Church. But this book is kind of the lead-in into that book.
Okay. How so? Because this talks about the politics of Catholic higher education. I have to admit, though reading the Renewal book, there is renewal and there's light at the end of the tunnel. Reading through a lot of this, it didn't seem like things were necessarily getting lighter, unless there's the old joke says it's an oncoming train, you know, in the tunnel there. So how did this lead into the other one? But why is there status envy? Is that just the original sin we all have?
Well, you're right. This book is a little bit more negative. I wasn't that optimistic about Catholic higher education a few years ago. I am a little bit more, but not all Catholic higher education. There's still problems. And from my perspective, a lot of the problems in Catholic higher education emerge from this idea of envy. And we know that's a serious sin in our church, and we all can suffer from it to one extent or another. But I think Catholic higher education has had a real problem with envying the Ivies and envying the big schools, because they seem to think that they would have higher status. A lot of Catholic leaders and Catholic college faculty, they would have higher status if they could just kind of get rid of all those Catholic rules. It's kind of embarrassing for them.
Well, let me ask you a question, because in reading through the book and even just dealing with, sometimes we talk about the difference between jealousy and envy. Why isn't it just jealousy? You know, the fact that I want what they want. Usually envy has to do with wanting to take away what that other person has, at least so I can better myself. Is it just status envy sounds better than status jealousy?
I guess in a way, because I conflate them somewhat.
Right.
But I think there is a serious problem with envy in that a lot of Catholic faculty, Catholic college faculty at some of the biggest schools seem to believe that they are better, perhaps, than the other schools, but they don't get the respect that they deserve.
Okay.
And so I don't know that they want to bring them down, but they want to certainly be in the same ballpark.
But why would you say, here you are, and you're not just talking about, you know, Doug Keck, college professor. We're talking about priests and religious on both sides who are involved with education, who, if they read the scriptures, know the idea of looking for acclamation from man is not what we should be concerned about, is it?
No. But a lot of these schools want, I mean, even when they were started, they were looked down upon, and the president of Harvard gave
you talk about that in the book.
Yeah, I talked about that.
Right,
he thought that we were just like in the Dark Ages. So there was reason for that.
Right, and even well of what is 100 years ago, they started not accepting
credits from
your
Georgetown.
Credits won't count.
They didn't count
like
because they were viewed as, you know, this fundamentalist Catholic view, and that was Georgetown. So there was reason for those kinds of concerns 100 years ago.
Now, right at the beginning, now you're at Franciscan University, but here you say, of the many who helped me in this book, I'm most indebted to my students at the University of San Diego. Their observations, insights about Catholic higher education reflected throughout the pages. Now, you also note in there that, I guess with the founding of that, they were hoping to make that the Notre Dame of the West.
Yes.
As I saw, I'm not sure if they succeeded, or maybe they succeeded too well. You could tell me better.
Oh, it's a wonderful school,
good school,
wonderful students, but there are still some problems.
What was the insights you got from the students that are reflected in this book?
Well, I'm still getting those insights. That's the strange thing. I still get letters from students who are at the University of San Diego. I'm very blessed to be at Franciscan now, which is one of the faithful ones. There's very few faithful ones, just a little over a dozen, and the Cardinal Newman Society identifies those, and I identify them in the book. But it's always been a dream of mine to be able to teach in a faithful Catholic university, because I spent 15 years at the University of San Diego. And students were very frustrated there, and I was too, at the progressive loss of a strong Catholic identity. And it's evidenced in so many ways: internships at Planned Parenthood, law students for reproductive justice, a chapter of that on the campus. But wonderful students who came there because the school was Catholic. And when I say, I still get letters from students who never met me but know my writing and are at the University of San Diego. I just got one 2 weeks ago from a student who was debating whether he should pray publicly in front of the annual drag show that they're holding there last Thursday, or I think it was a while ago. They have it every spring. And the student was perplexed. He doesn't want to bring a lot of attention to himself, but he's Catholic, and he wants to be Catholic.
Right, he's trying to figure out, am I called to stand up at this, or is this something
or should I just,
or am I, being judgmental now? I mean, that would, people start to
question. But even at San Diego, there are some great people. There's a new, he has a new spiritual director there. There are some good things going on.
But what was it they talk about sometimes, if somebody examined the evidence of your life, would there be evidence that you were a Christian or a Catholic? I think you could say the same thing about a lot of these universities, where I think most people, if they didn't see the brochure someplace, or they just heard about it, they'd have no idea that it was Catholic.
Well, the grounds very often, but the one Notre Dame researcher called it a Potemkin village on a lot of these Catholic campuses, and that the facade is this beautiful, beautiful campus with, holy statues and crucifixes, but it's all a facade on many of these campuses. I don't want to say all, of course. Right, exactly.
But on many. In fact, you talk about in the book elsewhere the idea that there's even where people have their websites and their brochures may be different. One tends to emphasize one, depending who the audience they're trying to reach
exactly,
is, right?
Yes. In a lot of schools, a lot of
what
ads,
US Weekly gets is a little different than what might show up.
Nothing about the Catholic
emails
identity.
To the parishes there promoting about what a wonderful Catholic education
Depends on what website
your child you would go to.
If you click on one university at one website, you'll get a whole different view of it at another website.
Now, right at the beginning here, you talk about a Monsignor John Tracy Ellis and about how he became a celebrity in Catholic education, and we haven't recovered yet, more than 50 years ago. Was he the one who put forward the idea that the Catholic education was perpetuating mediocrity, or is that just an overview, the general malaise that was out there?
A lot of people say he popped the cork on this building up of concern about a second-class status for Catholic colleges and universities. And he said, we need to be universities first and Catholic later. And, those of us like you, Doug, you have to be Catholic first and then be a university. But and a good man wrote this fantastic article, really encouraging Catholic schools to strive for upward mobility.
It's interesting, too, because he accused Catholic faculty members of, quote-unquote, living within a ghetto mentality. We hear that a lot from the old parish in the 50s and stuff. You got to get out of this ghetto mentality. But this was the other thing that I thought was interesting. You say, Ellis concluded that Catholic academics would never achieve parity with their counterparts on secular campuses unless they overcame their sense of inferiority and began to act like scholars. Well, why did they go hand in hand? Why can't one be fully Catholic and not feel inferior?
I know. And why can't there be Catholic scholars? I mean, we know plenty of Catholic scholars. You've had them on your show, Robert George. There are lots of Catholic scholars.
They make it out as if there's no Catholic Einsteins and other stuff gets mentioned. We're falling behind. Meanwhile, unless I'm wrong, the most educated class in the United States are Catholics.
It's true. Absolutely true. And many of them educated in Catholic colleges and universities.
Right, and in so many places you go and see that, and you find out whether they're practicing or not, that they went to a Catholic university or they were raised Catholic, as they would say. So now you also bring up, and people have heard about this who've looked into this in the past, Monsignor Wren and other ones, the famous Land O'Lakes Conference. And you have another expression for that. What was it? That was kind of like a joke expression, but
like a Catholic Woodstock.
Yeah, the Catholic Woodstock, exactly.
And that we all just threw off our old
we're
clothes.
throwing off our... But it's the same thing I was thinking about, is that people think about Woodstock a certain way because it's iconically, but the reality of it was much different than what people think about it. The weather was lousy.
Mud.
It was a mess.
Drug overdoses. It was ugly.
People were,
people died.
Exactly. So I mean, but why was
nostalgia,
this? Why was this great throwing off? Why was that so important? What drove that?
Well, Father Hesburgh of Notre Dame fame a wonderful man. But he decided in order for Catholic colleges to achieve this upward mobility, this status envy that they didn't talk about, he felt that we needed to have complete autonomy from the church. And so they all got together in Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin, and had this meeting, all men, all college presidents, many of them Jesuits, several of them, and they all just talked about how we have to separate ourselves. We have to have complete autonomy from the church. And that was a pivotal moment. It really was. It was a throwing off of the church.
And it was, in a sense, as you talk about it here, in a sense, the perfect storm, because it was happening right at that point of Vatican II.
Right.
When it seemed like a lot of things suddenly, rightfully or wrongfully, misreading of documents, etc., general perceptions, the spirit of Vatican II.
Opening those windows.
Yeah, opening the windows, that suddenly everything was sort of up for grabs, or people weren't quite sure what they were supposed to believe anymore.
And in the secular society, there was all these liberation movements, the women's liberation movement. So you had college presidents, one of them a woman, a sister, who gave up her vows.
Right.
She said, if I'm going to be president of this university, I'm not going to be a nun.
Right, they dropped, what, Sacred Heart off the, was it Manhattanville?
Yeah, the Manhattanville College of the Sacred Heart. They dropped off the Sacred Heart because it sounded,
yeah. And you see where the...
Yeah, because it's embarrassing to have that little tag.
Yeah.
Manhattanville sounds so much better.
Right, by doing this, she could be the... What is she? There's even a line she talked about being without being under obedience.
Right. This was Sister Grinnan. That was another school.
Yeah. Okay.
And she became secular.
Right.
She said, to lead this school, I will be. I cannot be. Religious.
You also point out in the upside down world of Catholic colleges and universities, there's status in hosting a Department of Ethnic Studies or Office of Assessment, while there's no status derived from activities related to strengthening the Catholic identity.
No, not at all. No, that's the saddest part to me. And faithful Catholics are not rewarded; they're reviled in on a lot of these campuses.
You go on to say, and this is interesting because I think we see this in general, not on just Catholic universities. You talk about this hopelessly radical political views we see. These political views, it does not take long to recognize, usually feature a complex shifting and reorientation of society so that people like themselves will be allowed a justly deserved role of power. It's amazing how when people define the way things should be, everybody should be the same, except maybe I should be the philosopher king.
Oh, you see this at all schools. Fairfield University is kind of famous because they have a Catholic Studies program that's led by a former Jesuit, Paul Lakeland, who thinks that everyone should be able to be priests, that there shouldn't be a man set apart. But then he gets down to it. But I think the most appropriate people to be priests are theologians, like he is, this former married priest now. So he thinks he should still be able to be a priest, but not, and he says very clearly, not a plumber.
Right.
So he lists a whole bunch of people who couldn't be priests.
Open they are to, to the
great
until
but he's open to himself.
How caste system. Well, Luther, Luther was very interested in interpreting the Bible until somebody else started doing it, and then he said, well, wait a second, I can do this, but
here. That always makes me laugh.
Exactly.
But yeah, Paul Lakeland said it should be open gays, women, the priesthood, everybody. But some are more suited, like me.
Right, exactly, right, or at least I'll design the course for it. This was interesting too, and there was a study here, and it says results indicated that Catholic seniors at Catholic colleges, this was, I guess, from the time they entered to the time they left, showed sizable increases in support for legalized abortion, premarital sex, and same-sex marriage after 4 years at a Catholic college. Reminds me of who was Bishop Sheen used to say, send your kids to a secular school where they fight for their faith as opposed to a Catholic university where it gets taken away from them.
Yeah, and that was in the 50s.
Right,
50s
he saw it already.
Yeah.
Now, was Monica Hellwig still around?
Well, she's died since that, but she has been just an advocate. She's been great, I suppose, for the status of Catholic colleges and universities she was, but she was so resistant to any kind of Catholic identity. I've gone to a couple of conferences where she spoke, and she spoke very disparagingly of a strong Catholic identity.
Yeah, she talks about how important critical thinking is. This is all the critical thinking. As long as you don't criticize them, it's okay to have critical thinking.
She very much looks down on the kind of college that I teach in now, the faithful ones, the Ave Marias, the Franciscans.
Those ghetto ones, right? Yeah, just talking to each other. You actually talk about the fact, and have you seen this where you've taught this re-education process, that there really is this idea of taking these kind of faithful kids who come in, you know, generally Catholic in their upbringing stuff, and trying to tell them, we got to smarten you up.
Well, ridicule them.
Right. Is that what it is?
Oh, I've seen it. Yes. And I still get evidence of that. People still write to me because I'm still writing about this, because I have hope for Catholic colleges and universities. And that's why I wrote this latest book, Renewal, because there are good things happening.
Right.
This book, I think, was 2012, 2013.
Right.
So it's a few years old.
Right.
Things have gotten better.
Really? Okay, good. Well, it's interesting, too, because you say early concerns about secularization and status, and you go to point out that though we tend to focus basically on the 60s for all of these problems, the truth is that concerns about secularization and status surrounded the earliest Catholic colleges, and you're talking about 1789.
I know. Isn't that the funny part?
Right.
So things haven't changed that much, really.
Right. And again, we see is some of it the way they saw? I mean, we tend to know, if you pay attention, that Harvard and the other major, they were started basically as religious schools, or at least were founded by, you know, denominations and things, and then just kind of went secular. Is that what some of the Catholics just see, the same thing? We just move in that same direction where, yeah, we were founded, but we've moved beyond that.
Beyond. Many of them advertise their school as in the Catholic tradition, but not as a Catholic school,
right? Founded
in the Catholic tradition, or based on. So this has been going on for a while. And Father Hesburgh, he was really he had real status striving, and he was
well, he
very
got more
good
awards
for
than
Notre
150
Dame.
honorary degrees. He was on every board in the world.
Every board, including the Rockefeller Foundation.
How do you work out with that
Foundation.
one? I mean,
I know.
They're involved
so
with
his legacy is still going
control.
strong. I mean, people complain about Father Jenkins, but in some ways he isn't even as bad as Father Hesburgh was.
At least he tried to stop the vagina monologues before he realized, you know, as you put here, you know, people are like, they think, well, it's Catholic, yeah, we really shouldn't, you're right. And then the fury that comes out, you know, demonic fury that comes out of
He wasn't prepared for that. Father Jenkins did try to stop the V monologues from being shown, because it portrayed favorably a lesbian relationship between a 13-year-old girl and a 30-year-old woman. And everybody applauds, and he's like, this shouldn't be. But he had a listening tour on campus.
Even in the secular world, they shouldn't applaud that, because that's child abuse.
Well, they've changed it since. The play was written with a 13-year-old girl. They've changed it to a 16-year-old girl. But it's still child abuse. It's still an adult woman and a 16-year-old girl, and it's shown around Valentine's Day on many Jesuit campuses and other Catholic campuses. Still shown.
Right. The other thing that's interesting, and you point out here, and we see it, which is in so many of these universities, and you're talking about Father Hesburgh here, by publicly embracing the social gospel and civil rights, social justice, and distancing them from those teachings less acceptable to the liberal establishment on sexual morality and reproduction. That's what's interesting, is this kind of clear cafeteria. It's like we're all embarrassed over all of the moral kind of things. It's, you know, those kind of things. But when it comes to social justice, well, we're in there. We're there.
Catholic.
Yeah,
and that's the true Catholic. And we still see that today. So on Catholic campuses, social justice is defined as access to same-sex marriage. Social justice is defined as access to abortion. And that's why you have these internships. 63 Catholic colleges just this year offer internships or career opportunities at Planned Parenthood. Or they have faculty who are either working concurrently at Planned Parenthood or got degrees. One faculty member, a nursing faculty member on a Catholic campus, got her nursing degree as a joint program between Planned Parenthood and UC at San Francisco. And she's teaching.
Meanwhile, some secular university, if they had somebody on the other side who was doing all these pro-life things, they wouldn't be nearly as open. You know, it's like this kind of thing. I have to prove how liberal and open-minded we are. But meanwhile, as one priest used to say, if you scratch a liberal, you get a fascist.
That is true. No, he's right about that. You do.
You know. You also talk about here, this is something I wasn't aware of. American colleges followed the English model, which separated secondary and collegiate work. The Catholic college adhered to the French and German models that combined secondary school and college. Why how did that have an impact? And what did that mean?
Well, it was looked down upon then. So like the Harvards and the Yales didn't want to accept our credits, and it was not viewed as high enough status. And we still see that argument played out today in arguments about the humanities and the liberal arts, versus a more STEM approach, science, technology, engineering, and math. So this whole first chapter gives you the foundation and why these problems
things were happening.
Yeah.
We say here, excellence became increasingly, you quote somebody named Gleason, defined as the way things were done at Harvard.
Yes. And
this was a fateful decision for Catholic higher education. And it does seem to be that, Harvard, he went to Harvard, she went, that means, why again are we taking our direction from, who decided that Harvard was the place?
I know. Well, Father Hesburgh, I blame him.
Yeah, really?
Throughout this book, I'm sorry to say.
Well, I noticed he
because
gets mentioned
in
quite
addition,
often.
he looked at Harvard to want to emulate. And then all the Catholic colleges got permission to do what Notre Dame does. So when Notre Dame this year will honor Biden,
yes,
a pro-choice Catholic, other Catholic colleges believe, well, Notre Dame does it, we can do it. So they give each other permission.
Right, yeah.
The drag show, when I expressed some concerns about the drag show at University of San Francisco, I was told that Santa Clara has a drag show and University of San Francisco has a drag show. So they look to the Jesuit colleges for permission to do these kinds of things.
Yeah, well, it's the old kind of thing. Well, this isn't as bad as that. Yes. I remember when I have to admit that I worked on a particular channel that was pretty avant-garde in the 80s, and the mainline channel, Showtime, HBO, used that as a way to say, well, see, we're not as bad as that, so it's okay. So everybody's leveraging themselves against what the worst standard is, as opposed to, that shouldn't be our standard, shouldn't it? No. Shouldn't it be the best thing? Now, in Chapter 3, you talk about secularizing the mission, and you quote the late great Father Richard John Newhouse, editor of First Things, who recalls a colleague telling him that when a school is haggling over its mission statement, it is a sure sign that it has already lost its way.
Oh yeah, when they start taking out, commitment to Catholic identity.
Right. And
a lot of them have.
Well, again, I think we see the same thing even with religious orders. When one loses sight of the original charism of the founder or the foundress, many times it seems like things go astray.
Well, a lot of them have replaced the idea of Catholic college with the name of the order. So now the Jesuits have put the Catholic back in, but it used to be in the Jesuit tradition or a Jesuit college. Now it's a Catholic Jesuit. So I have to give credit to the Jesuits. I was hard on the Jesuits in this book, and if I had this book to do over, in fact, I call my chapter "A Pope Away from a Perfect Life" for the Jesuits, because in 2010, now they have a Jesuit. They have a perfect life. And he has done some wonderful things. And there are young men that are stepping up and joining the Jesuits. The Jesuits had their largest their largest class of ordained in 15 years. They ordained 28 priests. And there was worry that in my chapter I talk about the implosion of the Jesuits.
Sure,
yeah,
exactly.
There were real problems. So they always advertised themselves as a Jesuit college.
So who were the gallery owners?
Yeah. Father Paul Shaughnessy wrote an article and published it in the Weekly Standard in 2002. And in it he described a typical Jesuit campus. And his article was harsh, because in 2002 I was with him on the Jesuits. And I'm sad to say that, because my husband's a graduate of University of San Francisco, loves his school, donates to his school, and he hates it when I say these
you talk
things.
About Father Fessio.
Oh,
and the
yeah, and he got
Institute
such a terrible time there. Father Fessio started this very faithful area at the University of San Francisco, the Ignatian Institute, that studied the great books and were faithful. And he was really removed from campus. The gallery owners, Father Paul Shaughnessy writes about, is the way he describes Jesuit college presidents, in that they're very worried about status and very worried about fashion and art, and not so much worried about Catholic identity. They're embarrassed about it. So that's really shut aside.
Did they like religious art?
I don't know. I
sort
doubt
of, maybe.
I don't think so.
Probably
not.
That's in the back of the gallery.
That's what he calls it. It's
right
a
after
very
the
funny
Mablethorpe exhibit. It's up front, and then
the Mablethorpe.
And then we got to the.
But you're seeing it even today. I mean, I hate to say this, because I'm working on an article about the Jesuits. My article is being called can Pope Francis save the Jesuits? And I think he can. But the University of San Francisco president publicly in the San Francisco Chronicle just last week congratulated the basketball coach at University of San Francisco, a female basketball coach who married her lesbian partner, and congratulated them. We're very happy for her. Now, that was going beyond. You could be happy that she's happy, but not congratulating her on her same-sex marriage. That seems wrong. And the San Francisco Chronicle picked it right up, so you can go to the Chronicle and read about...
And that's what makes it difficult for the Catholic in the pew, who's then made to feel like, because they're trying to live out what they think the Church is teaching, that they're a Luddite, or they're 100 years behind, as what Steinfeld kind of talks about. Well, we're really seeing on the Catholic University what the Church is going to be like 100
Peter
years from now.
Steinfeld, he says liberal Catholicism is what the Church will be in 100 years. We're just so much more prescient than the rest of you.
If he's right about there's not going to be a very big church, I have to admit.
No, I don't think so either.
I think, well, thank you so much, Ann Hendershott, for standing up and speaking out on the truth. It's great to have you here. And the book is Status Envy, The Politics of Catholic Higher Education. Well worth the read, available through the EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. Thank you for joining us right here on EWTN's Bookmark. And we will catch you next time. Thanks.